Hi, I'm Pauline Muth from West Charlton, New York on Nebari TV.
All right, and I'm guest interviewer Brandon Herwick. So excited to interview my teacher and friend and mentor, Pauline. I guess, Pauline, how are you?
Pretty good. We're all here. We don't have the virus. We're in good shape.
That's right. Just like Claude does in the beginning, let's start at the beginning. So, when did you start, and how did you get into bonsai?
I started bonsai over 40 years ago at a plant show at Schenectady Museum. We used to tear apart this museum, and 5 plant societies put on a show. Got it all put together, spent the week. It was gorgeous. Saturday morning, it thunder, lightning, nobody came for a while. So we sat there. Was not much to do, just to talk to each other. I belong to GIPA, the Greenhouse and Indoor Plant Association, and next door to me was this fledgling Mohawk Hutsey study group for bonsai. And Earl Pudney was sitting there, and he said, "Come over and do a tree." And that's how it started. And from then on, I took lessons, and I finally got conned into joining the Bonsai Society.
Oh, nice, cool. And what I really love is that seems to set the foundation for valuing clubs for you, and then continuing to have your own because you've created quite an environment here as well.
Yeah, well, that part of that was Earl and the guys because in those days there's no internet. You wanted bonsai supplies, it was tough.
Yeah.
You go out towards Rochester or go out to Boston, but right here, no, we didn't. You did it by mail order, but first you had to find a catalog or find a place that sold it. So you went into a bonsai magazine and you figured out who were some of the suppliers, and that's how you got things. And then Earl says, "Hey, why don't you run a little shop and get the supplies, etc. for us?" First, I ran it out of the basement of my house, and then eventually, my husband was very nice enough to build me this beautiful studio.
So cool. What was your first bonsai?
Procumbens nana,
Of
of course.
course.
Procumbens nana, because Earl could get those for a couple bucks a piece, and we did every design you could possibly do on a Procumbens nana. Drove me crazy because I break out with Procumbens nana. I wear gloves all the time.
Oh. So needless to say, you probably don't still have that tree.
I don't, and I kind of really let them go because, like I said, I don't work well with procumbens. Right. It's a good species to work with, but not for me.
Right. And who are your early influences, and what are some of the things that they gave you?
Oh, lots of them. I was lucky enough early on. Another member of that early study group called Mohawk Hudson was Josie Biondo. She was a lovely, lovely lady, and she believed in paying it forward. So she would drag me off to conferences. I think we started with Bill Valvanus' second conference, and I got to start seeing real people. But to backtrack a little, the first person I got to see that was one of the great guys was John Naka. That very first meeting of Mohawk Hudson Bonsai Society that Earl got me to attend was John Naka doing it. And I was enthralled because that was, quote, real bonsai. But it worked out really nice. And then along the way, I found certain artists I really like. Nick Lenz, one of my all-time favorites. John Naka, of course, and I went to a lot of study things with John over the years. Yuji Yoshimura, our bonsai study group from Shohin study group from Mohawk Hudson Bonsai Society, went down several times a year. And in those days, I owned a Lucero van, so 6 of us piled in my big van and we went down to Yuji's place to study a couple of times a year. And he taught techniques. Style, not so much. But he taught techniques, but that was okay because people like Nick Lenz and John Naka taught style. I'd say in my early days, those were the 3 that influenced me the most. Learned a lot from Bill Valvanus because of his conferences. He's a very, very good teacher. And he had everybody under the sun teaching at his conferences over time. So I've got notebooks and notebooks. I learned a lot of things from tropical trees from Ed Trout and Mary Miller and Mary Madison, which I love down there, Pedro Morales, those kinds of people. Later on, all over the place. Chase Rose at the beginning, spent a lot of time with him. He's extremely good and a very good teacher. Um, I eventually started doing my own things, so I got to travel around the States to see people elsewhere. And I'd say, like on the West Coast, people like Kathy Shaner and Cheryl Manning and those guys. And I could go on. There's tons and tons. But main guys, I think my influences would be Nick Lenz and John Naka for certain.
Wow. It's incredible to hear about these people that were your teachers and your influences, because now these are names, like household bonsai names.
Yeah.
When you were meeting them and learning from them, did you realize like how incredible it was for?
Well, John Naka, as far as I was concerned, was this guy on stage who was doing this really cool thing that I was watching. And then when we finished with that thing, Earl said to me, "You need to get John's books and do those." And then that's when I realized, oh wait, that's this guy, because we didn't have the internet showing these guys or anything. I hadn't gone to conferences yet. So finally I went to conference. I went, oh yeah, it's John. That's John. That's John. That's John. All the time. It's like, that's cool. A lot of times, those early days when I first met them, they were just really good artists.
Yeah.
And because the bonsai world is a friend's world, that makes the big difference. It's not like you're meeting this guy. No, yeah. He's this guy. He just happens to have more knowledge than you would do about the subject. And that's what was one of my best things that I just loved about bonsai. We don't have a lot of big egos. Are they there? Sure. But they're in the minority.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that's the way you teach your classes as well, because in one of our recent intermediate classes, we were doing the ficus chop. Mm-hmm. And everyone went to each other and were like, oh, what do you think about this? And what do you think about this? And there was nobody that was just like, I know what I'm doing completely. Okay. Everyone's teaching each other and kind of giving each other feedback. And then ultimately it's up to the individuals.
Yeah, because bonsai is a very hands-on thing. I mean, I do science teacher, and I believe that same thing there. Hands-on, hands-on. You got to work. That's why I like having the big workshop sessions in the afternoon after a lesson, because you got it. If you don't sit down and learn it, you're never going to really get it.
Yeah, 100%. So you were a science teacher. Mm-hmm. You now transition as a bonsai teacher, and you still incorporate a lot of those science techniques into your teaching, right? So I'll be curious for this question on its, what do you look for in a bonsai and why? And then do you consider any, like, the health of the tree might be one of your considerations, but are you looking for outside of the art or aesthetics when you look for something in a tree? So what are you looking for in a bonsai?
In a bonsai or a pre-bonsai I'm going to work on?
Well, both. Yeah, what are you looking for in each?
Okay. If it's a pre-bonsai, I've got to see a feature in it that I love, whether it's bark or a mouse hole or the foliage form, the trunk, the Nebari. I've got to see something I really like. Yeah, you can make something out of the other stuff, but if I'm getting it for me, especially at my age, I'm looking for really something cool that I can work from. When I look out at bonsai in general, I want to picture myself under that tree, curled up with my book, and I just love where I am.
Yes.
I want to see something that doesn't just look like a helmet all the time, that it's got some character.
Yeah, I love that. And with that, do you think that bonsai has any standards? So I guess you can interpret this in different ways. Like, the definition of a tree in a tray is what defines bonsai for almost everyone. But are there any standards?
Yeah, because it's got to be an artistically designed tree in a container.
Okay.
If you don't have that artistically designed, then you've got a potted plant. Period.
Sure. I know you've been part of, and maybe you can talk a little bit about some of the leadership roles that you have now, but do you think that exhibitions are part of the art? And if yes, what role do they play?
Oh, exhibitions are a big part of the art. Can you do them without it? Sure. No problem. And with the internet, you can even see different levels and you can aspire to them. But there's nothing like major exhibitions or even your club exhibition to raise your level up. Because I noticed where there is none, people, okay, that tree looks good. But when you're vying for a space in a major exhibition, even if you don't want an award in them, you just want to get your tree in there, your art becomes better. If you take a look, like we've only had nationals for a very short time.
Right, our US
Valvanus did.
Sure.
And okay, so you've got my national books over here. You look from the first book to the most recent book, and you will see a change in what that has done for American bonsai. You look in books from other countries where you've got sets of them, you see how it's increased because people look, oh, wow, oh, geez, look what they're doing. And they go up from there. And I think they're very good. However, I don't have a problem because I've got an awful lot of students here who come in, get their supplies once a year, ask for a few questions, buy a couple of trees, and they disappear and have fun on their property. I don't have any problem with those people. But to see bonsai increase and get better, exhibitions help. You don't need to be in them all. I think my teacher Nick Lenz was a really good example. His stuff just got better and better and better and better. He wasn't going out and exhibiting. Were his trees in exhibitions? Sure, people who bought them, oh yeah, his trees have been in the exhibitions.
Right.
But did he need that? No, because his art was concentrated in doing that.
Now, I know you've exhibited. What is it that exhibitions give you? And then a lot of the conversations that have been on Nebari TV have talked about sometimes the fear of judgment, or how when you're putting a piece of work into an exhibition, you have to kind of understand that there's going to be some critique of it. So
I think that being a former teacher, I had so much experience with constantly being evaluated. I knew how to say, okay, I can do this. It's just people's opinions.
Right.
I'm not going to worry about it. I put it in my favorite exhibitions, and the National did it the first couple of ones. They gave you the judge's opinion. I love that, good or bad, because then you can improve. So if I'm doing a critique now for a club, I want to give you points. These are the good points. These are the things you need to improve. It's up to you if you want to write them down, but I'm going to tell you exactly what they are, because an exhibition should be a learning experience, okay? In any exhibition, whether you're talking about sports or you're talking about an art form, someone's got to tell you, you're doing this wrong. Wow, you're doing this right. And then it increases you. And right. I think that's why I put it. I don't expect to win the awards. Not with some of the guys we have out there that have this incredible artistic talent. I have to admit, my thing is botanical, it's horticultural. And I can design a decent tree, but I'm not up to the standards of those great artists. I wish I was, but I'm not. Like I can tell you how to get there if you've got the image in your head.
Right. Well, I think you're selling yourself a little short. I think you have some pretty amazing skill on the trees that you've exhibited that either you are continuing the journey of from other people, or that you've designed are pretty amazing too.
Yeah, well, the only one that I've put in exhibition that someone else designed are two trees. And one I didn't even put in exhibition. I have a Nick Lenz I've had for way over a decade, and I have exhibited that to honor Nick. And I tell people it's a Nick Lenz tree, even though I'm keeping it up now. Right. And the other one is a John Naka tree that I happen to have inherited from someone who won it from that very first demo that I did. But it's a John Naka tree, as far as I'm concerned, because he did the original design. Have I worked on it? Oh, yeah. But, those are good people. I like to, and that was just because they wanted a John Naka tree at one of the nationals. Otherwise, if I'm going to exhibit it, I want it to be the trees that I've done.
Right, right. Where are you? There's been a lot of conversation about the traditional display and all the different components of that. And I know, you teach that. So I've learned a lot from you about that. But there's also some really out there, really creative displays that are happening now, sometimes pushing the limits. Where do you stand on that? What do you think?
love crazy display. I had a stand built especially for the national. It wasn't. That's going to be this coming fall. That's not what most people expect because I want something different. And I'll give you a first announcement here. You get a
Nebari TV exclusive.
That's right. We just completed yesterday the major plans for the ABS that'll be in 2022 down in Olive Branch, Mississippi. It's ABS Rendezvous on the River. And it is going to include for its exhibition, so start getting ready, the forms will be out pretty soon, an all artistic exhibition. We're going to give you 2 meters of space, and you're going to fill it with your great exhibition quality tree in an artistic setting. 100%.
Wow.
We will have some traditional displays that have already been arranged in another room, but the main exhibition room is going to be all artistically displayed trees, which is going to take you some time. Like I said, the forms will be out within about a month. And we want to see some very creative stuff. So get your trees ready and get your thinking caps on. Take a look at what Black Scissors and some of those are doing. And by the way, yes, the inspiration for this is Robert Stephen, and he will be one of our teachers.
Wow, that's definitely going to be a must-attend event.
It definitely is. And Brandon, remember, we want youth. We want youth to come. So.
Well, you know, I'm so glad because that's a nice segue into kind of what I wanted to talk about next is that you wear many hats now as an artist, as a bonsai professional, as a ceramicist, as a teacher, but you also just love the art of bonsai. So are there any general words of advice that you would give to somebody who wanted to start out in any of those things, or specifics for each ceramicist, artist? I know Michael Hagedorn was somebody who came through PFM Bonsai when he was just starting off in ceramics before he went to Japan. But what would you, because it's not easy, you know, it's a nice retirement job, but you know, to be a full-time bonsai person is difficult.
Yeah, I think if you want to be full-time right from the beginning bonsai person, you better have some major financial backing.
Okay.
Period. End of story. And a lot of the new big artists they had family behind them or investors behind them. You have to do it. I did it little by little. My little thing underneath the house there, our little bitty studio, to do 1 or 2 people at a time before my husband did this. Yeah, I had some financial help. I didn't pay for this. He did. I furnished it from substitute teaching in my bonsai work. I'm in it largely because I absolutely love to do it. I've gotten super involved because I'm stupid enough not to sit on my hands. Because if I see a job that needs done, I'll end up volunteering to be a job. And once you start doing that, you get over-involved. I've stepped back a lot from it. Yeah, I've been in a lot of those. And every time I step back, I get pulled back in. I liked bonsai from the beginning because of the sense of peace I got when I sit down. I can sit here in my studio, nobody bugging me, put my headphones on, my iPods, and listen to a murder mystery or an adventure story. I am a very happy person. I can sit and play with my trees all day long. And that started from just having Saturday mornings to work on it, you know, when I was working. I think that if you want to get involved in it and you really want to do it, like I said, it needs money. As my husband says, how do you make a small fortune in bonsai? You start with a large fortune. I've done mine basically on a cash basis, slowly working my way up to having a reasonable income. In fact, my accountant is very happy that the last several years I actually have a profit from my business. We'll see after this COVID, but so I think if you want to get into it professionally, find someone to study with that's really good. I love the young bloods that have taken their bodies off to Japan and and committed the 6 years to do that, etc. I'm hoping someday we'll see more women do it. We've got Kathy Shaner, but we could use some more that we're going to spend the time and put it in. I do think that we now have the ability here to make those people. We've got the great guys here that you can actually go and study with, and you can raise yourself to the kind of level that they achieved by going to Japan. So I think those things are going to change. Pottery, I got into it as kind of something to do in the winter, and it was fun, and I went and took some lessons, and I got, watched what other really good artists were doing to make my funky little pots. I'm not going to make the great big stuff, but I'm going to have fun with it. And it was an easy thing to travel to California to and vend when I was giving lessons and whatnot. So it's kind of a fun thing. I like doing it. Someday I'll even own a kiln so I can do it at a faster rate.
I can't wait for that too.
Well, I'm not going to have one. I don't have the right electricity. Myron's already informed me that we should have done that at the beginning when we styled all this stuff up, but we didn't. But I've got friends who have kilns, so I worked from that. As far as tried to sell a little bonsai, today you got the internet. You can dip your foot in easily and find out if your stuff is going to sell or not.
Yeah.
What we need are more people growing trees.
Yeah.
So if some of you want to get out there and get on the bottom level, make trees. Learn the right way to make them. And we've got great collectors, but there's only so much collected material out there. Make some trees for us, especially shohin, please.
Yes. We know you love the shohin, and we enjoy seeing them too.
I do. At my age, well, then I've got my big forest and my big land and waters that I won't give up. But my big trees have pretty well given up.
Yeah. Now, if you don't mind me asking a personal question, how long have you and Myron been married?
54 years. Be 55. Yeah, 54 years.
Wow, that's a tremendous feat. And do you have any advice for bonsai hobbyists who want to maintain a relationship as long as you and Myron have?
Well, I'm really lucky. My husband has a great hobby too that he's well invested in. He's a hunter and a major gardener. So because he has his and I have mine, I think it kind of creates a balance. Also, he's a really good guy. So he did build my studio. He built all these props that I have all over my property here. So that's helped a lot. He's been supporting. What I've seen a lot of clubs are couples where you got the major bonsai person, and sometimes you got a second major bonsai person, or sometimes you have a second one who simply does woodwork and helps out. You got a second one who does shirakuza and kusamono, and they go with it that way. Or second one's a potter, and they do the pottery. One thing I've really noticed traveling around some of the major nurseries is often there's the spouse that's absolutely as talented as the major artist and doing a lot of background work. And I'm amazed how much I see of that. In other cases, it's a spouse who does something else.
Yeah.
I think as long as you're not taking huge away from family time, doing it. When I first started, I had kids in grad school and all that kind of stuff, but I just did that little time on Saturday morning that was mine. And sometimes sports games interfered with that. And of course, correcting papers and other things, I didn't have the time for it. But I think if you segregate it, and then when you get to retirement, usually most spouses say, do what you want to do.
Yeah.
And I was lucky enough to retire at 55, so this was marking my 20th year of retirement. I've had a lot more time to do things.
Yeah. I know your kids haven't really gotten into the art or the hobby, but your grandkids have.
Yeah, my grandkids have.
Do you have any words of wisdom on because you're really patient with them and you're really caring with them, you give them a lot of freedom, and I know they have maybe better training and education than most or all bonsai professionals today, because they've had a workshop with almost every wonderful teacher who's come through here. But for those who want to get really young kids and people involved, what advice would you have for them?
Start early, make them very successful to start with, and make it fun. Don't worry about 8 million rules to start with. They'll pick up on it because they'll ask you questions. Why should I do this, or why should I do that? And then you can introduce the rule because they've asked. And then they'll stick to it. I mean, you've seen Max, he can explain rules to you and tell you what to do. And he's into pot selection and color and you name it. And as you know, he picks out the most expensive pots in my studio
He's got great taste
for his trees. And I can see where Miles, they're okay, but he's veering off that way. But Max is the twin that's going to go there, right brain, left brain twins. And I think that will work well. My daughter started young, and she was doing very well. She actually won awards with her bonsai, and she gave it up, by high school time. Okay, that's fine. It wasn't her thing. Yeah. So that's okay. But you introduce kids to it and see if they'll like it or not. I do work with horticultural high school, and we've been doing that for years and years and years. And one kid or two kids will get the fire. The others are at least planning on going to a horticultural business, but at least they'll know something about bonsai and how to take care of it.
Yeah. You've been involved in bonsai around the country, in the U.S. and around the world. What would you say the bonsai scene is in New York, in the U.S.?
New York in the U.S., I think it really depends on the part of New York. I mean, we're a big state, and we've got rural and city kinds of things and whatnot. We got a lot of active clubs in New York that are doing a lot. Because we had Bill Valvanis in our state in Rochester, who's so active. The western end of the state is very active around Bill. We've got the eastern end around Mohawk, Hudson, and me, and places here. As I watch the people coming into it now and doing, I think that we're getting more looking towards American styling rather than the Japanese styling or Chinese styling. I see people being a little more freed with what they feel they can do with their trees. Because of the national ones we mentioned before, I'm seeing people raise the level of their trees up, especially the ones, because a lot of the exhibitors do come from New York for the national. I see them raise the level of their trees up. The other thing I've seen in recent years, which I really love, is I see more people getting into beautiful displays in their yards and putting gardens around. And I really like seeing that. And when I travel to clubs, usually I'm staying at the house of someone who's really done that. And it's neat to see how much time and effort people are putting into this.
Yeah.
I'm expecting to see awesome trees at the National because of everybody being home.
Yes, because of COVID, there hasn't been one last year. Yeah.
Yeah.
So with mentioning you've been to a lot of different clubs, and I think you've created a really wonderful community here through the Mohawk Hudson Bonsai Society.
Well, that was here before me. That's how I started.
With the studio, with classes, and with Monday night open bonsai, where people can come and have some pizza and a drink if they like to, and help each other with their trees and work in the trees.
Yeah, my favorite.
If something like that exists, I think what I've learned from you is just if you like Field of Dreams, right? If you build it, they will come. If you create a place, people will come. But what advice would you have for people who maybe don't have an area in which there's a lot of active clubs? What can they do to start?
Well, definitely the internet. It's out there, and you've got people who are doing the online things like Bjorn Bornholm and such. That are you've got the knowledge out there that we did not have when we started. Mm-hmm. If you didn't find somebody you worked with like Yuji's book, and there wasn't much else.
Yeah.
But the one thing I would say, get thee to a conference. There are regionals all over the United States, big regionals, almost any time of year. Yeah, they had to take a year and a half off, but they're all coming back. The California, the Pacific Northwest Conference, the Mid-Atlantic states, the Florida, Louisiana, Lower South group down there. You've got the Mid-Atlantic states. You got now the Mid-Atlantic, and then there's some Northeast stuff starting to go. And a zillion clubs in it. You may not have one in your area, but maybe just by putting a notice out there on one of the social media sites, you'll find 2, 3, 4, 5 like-minded people that want to learn together, watch videos together, figure things out, go to conferences together. But get to a conference. You can't believe how much your learning will go up by going to a conference and then participating in what's going on. Don't just wander around the conference. Actually sit down and watch.
Right. And you've also told me the best way to get involved and to meet people is just to volunteer and just
Oh
say,
yeah, absolutely. Get involved with the American Bonsai Society, and they're going to have a conference every single year, like the upcoming one outside of Memphis in Olive Branch there. Um, you volunteer to do some things for that kind of stuff, and you work your way up. Don't sit on your hands. Raise them up and say, "I'm willing to do something." One of the best learning experiences I had, and I got a chance to work with John and Eugene, but one of my real best ones, for years, I was the guy on stage helping the people at our regional. And so 3 artists or 4 artists a year, and I got to wire for them and cup and hand them tools. You know how much you learn sitting next to a major artist?
yeah.
I almost cried when I had to switch that to another club for somebody else to do. Because it is one of the best things you can do. When I went to conferences, if they ever said, does someone want to come and help this person? I put my hand up. The very first time that I did that, I didn't actually do it. That friend Josie I mentioned, she did it. We were all sitting around at one of Bill's conferences, and the desk artist, Oshima, can't remember his name. He was going to finish wiring late into the night on this tree, and anybody who wanted to go, they had a breakout room. So we sat on the floor, and I was right next to it on the breakout room, Josie next to me, and he says, someone wanted to assist me, and I'm sitting there, and she pinches my tush. And so I went like this, and he goes, yes, you. And we wired till like 2 o'clock in the morning. I learned so well, I should say, wiring, working intensive with that man. And it was a great experience.
Yeah. I think it was David Easterbrook who might have said, we do bonsai not only to grow trees, but to grow people.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
Who won the Benny? Well, he was one of the Ben Oki scholarships. When he was talking with David said that, and it's so true.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so are you ready for some tree questions?
Sure, if I can answer them.
Deciduous or conifer, and why?
Yes.
Both.
Yeah, I like both. They both have their place. I like variety.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not going to ever be the person who's just a black pine person, etc. I like to learn about different kinds of trees. Deciduous, I love the spring and the fall colors, but I love them for winter. When there's no leaves on them, and you see all the branches and see if you've actually done the work or not done the work.
Yeah.
Conifers, I like the smell about them and working on them and getting my fingers all sticky. I'm still learning conifers. I am still learning conifers. There's so much technique involved in a conifer. I personally like the white spruces and stuff. I'd like to see them developed a lot more in this country. But they're fun to work with, and truthfully, as far as I'm concerned, if you want to see something progress a little faster, you get a pine, but like a mugo pine or black pine or jack pine. There's so much to work on it. But now I couldn't decide between the two. I think deciduous are vastly underrated in this country.
Yeah, and that's slowly changing. I think.
I think it is. People are starting to see the value in the branch.
Yeah.
But a pine up here in the north, where we've got acandeline, grows pretty slowly.
Right.
If you are, down in Puerto Rico and you're getting 4 and 5 candlings a year, right. You get to like those pines pretty well because poof, 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 and you've got it.
Right, and this is zone 4 up here, right?
I'm zone 4, yeah.
Pretty hot summers, pretty cold winters.
Yes.
If you could have only one species, what would it be and why?
Oh, come on, you can guess.
The larch?
Yeah, larch.
Yeah, larches. Yeah, that's what I thought.
You got a deciduous conifer.
Come
on, you got best of both worlds. I absolutely, I've got lots of larch. I absolutely love larch. Their ancientness is just beyond. They're survivors.
Yeah.
And they're just plain cool, and they give me something to do year round.
Yeah. And what tree can you put on the ground and just store in the snow for winter?
Yeah.
And then has this beautiful appearance in the summer.
Yeah.
as well?
Right.
and then
You
the
can't.
change. Yeah.
Yes.
I think I agree with
And
you.
that the deer don't come and eat.
That's right. That. Yeah, and I think I know part of the answer to this question. And the question is, what is one species you would never have again, and why? And I don't know if there is a species you wouldn't have again. There's just species, as you've said, that you have difficulty or it's really tough to grow in zone 4, right? Or is there a species you
Okay,
wouldn't have?
I can think of a few, and largely, for some reason, either I've got my climate problem or I just don't know how to deal. Ponderosa pine. I think they're cool.
Yeah.
I think they're very, very cool. I'm never going to do a short hand out of one.
Right.
Not that I haven't tried. I love buttonwoods, but I don't have the heat for it, and I'm not going to put that much heat in it. And I know how to grow them well. And Fucantees attract every kind of crazy critter under the sun in the greenhouse. So no, I'm not going to do a Fucantee. Others, I don't think there's others where I would. Yeah, I'm not fond of limber pines. I know they do well in some places. Those are probably the ones I avoid the most.
Okay. And what is one of the biggest learning curves you've encountered since starting bonsai and in your career that span a few decades now?
Doing well enough to time all my pines to do what I know I should do at the right time.
Right. So
you got to be vehement about watching and doing that at the right time. I think the solution to it is to have a smaller collection.
Right. Yeah. How's that working?
Yeah. And my collection is a little smaller. I've been trying to pare it down a little bit, but it's never going to get to the point where I'm really good about that. And I do have another life. So the people I admire the most are the people who, sunrise to sunset every day can work on their trees. I have not gotten to that point. And so I think that's part of it. It's not that I don't know what to do, it's finding the time to get it done.
Right. You've told me a fun story about Nick Lenz. Whenever he came and visited here, he would leave little ceramics around. Mm-hmm. Could you tell us a little bit more about that, and then maybe share another fun story about? I love your description of loving bonsai, a tree that you could sit under and read a book, and I think that very well encapsulates your approach to bonsai.
Oh, yeah.
You have fun with it. Could you share that story, and then maybe another fun story about?
Well, Nick Lenz would come and give workshops for people here for the weekend. We held many events. I'll tell you another interesting story on my way to the little things he did, because this happened during the weekend. One year, I think the average temperature on the weekend was 95.
Oh, wow.
That's
95 Fahrenheit.
Yes, that's right, which is hot. It was before we had the air-conditioned studio, and it was probably the biggest impetus, by the way, for me having an air-conditioned studio. We were out in a tent, rented tent outside, and it was hot. We had attendees who came, we had one that had heat stroke, this kind of thing. We had tons and tons of water, and Nick was working on stuff with a wet cloth around him, and the other artists, there were a number of artists here that weekend. And he, I think, it really happened with this nice northern weather, because he was just beyond too warm. But it worked out. But anytime he came for one of those weekends, he would leave a creature inside one of my trees, on one of the tree grounds, hidden up in the leaves somewhere, and he never said a word about him. The first one, it was fairly obvious. Mm-hmm. So I found that the first year. He gave me, I don't know, this one or this one. I think it might have been this. No, I think it was this one. This little critter. And one of his cephalopods. So and he had it crawling through one of my forests. So that one was obvious, and I know Nick well enough that, yeah, it was. And that was kind of cool. And I thanked him, and it was good, fine. And then it became a tradition of his. He would put something in one of my things. I have well, there's a bunch of them, but a couple of favorite things. This one was very obvious. Oh no, that's not it. That's my Nick head. I grabbed the wrong thing. That was actually Nick's head from a tribute that we did a couple years ago in Washington for him. And all of us that helped with it, an artist in Canada made little Nick lenses for us. But this was the baby head. Now, he put it in my split trunk bougainvillea, and he said this was baby bush because he was always of two minds. But one year, I decided he had quit. I looked and I looked and I looked, and there was no creatures. And then fall came, and the larch dropped their needles. And in my larch forest, hanging in a branch, was a little snake.
Wow.
I said, that was good.
Yes.
It went from spring all the way into fall, and that was the first time I found a snake.
Yes.
So I store these here, and when I'm going to have people come, etc., I put them back out in the trees out on my property. But that worked out well, and like I said, obviously must have happened to other people because
right.
We all got the little Nick heads with his beard and everything, which was really cool. And they gave a larger one that ended up in the museum in his honor.
I love that sense of wonder and that sense of fun and storytelling that comes with bonsai. Yeah, and Nick was a master of it. Still does that. Still is a great storyteller, and I love that you continue that.
He is one of my very, very favorite people in bonsai, and he's so down to earth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess the last question for today, and I'd love to have another time sharing more stories, is the question is, if you had one tip for those beginning in bonsai, what would it be? And then I'm going to add a question. If you had one tip for those who have been in bonsai for a while and maybe need a boost, what would that be?
I'd probably give them both the same piece of advice.
Okay.
Learn the species before you work on it.
Yes.
Because when you run a studio like this, you get to see a lot of trees from the poor people who were gifted them and whatnot. And they don't know anything about the species. How can they grow the tree? You can't treat it as a sculpture. It is an art form, but it's not a sculpture. Right. A sculpture is stagnant and it stays there. You don't have to worry about it. But if you don't know about the tree, you're not going to be able to grow it, or the shrub, because a lot of our things are just shrubs. It's my pet peeve, as you know. It is my pet peeve. First thing I tell students, learn the species. When I sell a tree here, you get a species sheet. You've got to learn the species. Period. End of story. I guess if I was saying if you're in it a long time and you're disappointed, 95% of the time it's because your trees have been dying. Yeah. So learn the species.
Good words to live by for sure. Pauline, thank you so much for having this conversation with me. And
thank you.
We're going to record a little walkthrough of the garden, I think, as spring hits and some of the snow melts. Mm-hmm. So we'll talk to Claude about posting that. And hopefully we can have you back on to talk some more bonsai stories, because I know you have a whole wealth of them. Yeah.
But do it before I forget.
All right, deal. Done. Nebari TV, Claude, thank you again, Nebari TV. We're out.